rehabilitation. Today it is so much simpler to do because of the internet and all that. You can change into many hundreds of different identities. So it was a lot more work involved in doing it back then. So it always amazes me that you would think what I did 50 years ago would be more difficult today, when actually it's 4,000 times easier today than when I did it. And that's
in the annals of financial crime, one name stands out as both legendary and infamous: Frank William Abagnale Jr. His story, which spans continents and decades, is a tale of audacity, brilliance, and transformation. This cold case began in the 1960s, during an era when financial institutions were more vulnerable to fraud. Through sheer ingenuity and an unmatched ability to manipulate people and systems, Abagnale created a legacy that would later inspire books, movies, and fraud prevention strategies. This narrative dives deep into his fascinating life and the far-reaching implications of his crimes. Born on April 27, 1948, in Bronxville, New York, Frank Abagnale Jr. grew up in a seemingly ordinary middle-class family. His father, Frank Abagnale Sr., was a small business owner and an active member of the local community, while his mother, Paulette, was a French immigrant. Despite his comfortable upbringing, Frank Jr.'s life took a dramatic turn when his parents divorced when he was just 16 years old. This event deeply affected him, creating a void he sought to fill through escapism and rebellion. One of his earliest brushes with deception came from an unlikely source: his father. Frank Sr., who was known for his charm and entrepreneurial spirit, often involved young Frank in his business dealings, teaching him the art of persuasion. However, Frank Jr. took these lessons to a whole new level. After running away from home, he began crafting schemes that would later evolve into full-blown criminal enterprises. Frank's earliest foray into crime involved credit card fraud. At just 16 years old, he used his father's gas card to purchase auto parts, which he resold for cash. This scheme, while simple, marked the beginning of his life as a con artist. His taste for the thrill of deceit grew rapidly, and he soon realized that the banking system of the 1960s was ripe for exploitation. The young Abagnale quickly learned the art of check forgery. By altering routing numbers on checks and depositing them into different banks, he created a system that allowed him to withdraw money before the checks were discovered as fraudulent. This method, known as check kiting, became one of his primary tools. However, Abagnale's ambitions didn't stop at small-time fraud. He was ready to take on bigger and more daring ventures. One of Abagnale's most famous personas was that of a Pan American World Airways pilot. At the time, airline employees were regarded as glamorous and trustworthy figures, making it an ideal cover for his schemes. Armed with a forged pilot's license and a counterfeit Pan Am ID badge, Abagnale managed to infiltrate the aviation world. Abagnale's modus operandi was deceptively simple. He would walk into an airport, dressed impeccably in a pilot's uniform, and claim he needed a jump seat to reposition for his next flight. Airline policies allowed pilots to hitch rides on other flights, and Abagnale used this loophole to fly for free around the world. Over the course of 2 years, he logged over 1 million miles on over 250 flights, visiting 26 countries, all without ever piloting an aircraft. This daring scheme not only allowed him to travel in style, but also provided opportunities to cash counterfeit payroll checks drawn from Pan Am accounts. Banks, impressed by his pilot credentials, rarely questioned the legitimacy of the checks. This scheme alone earned him an estimated $2.5 million. Abagnale's brilliance lay in his ability to adapt and create new identities to suit his needs. His escapades weren't limited to aviation. He donned several other personas, each more audacious than the last. In Georgia, Abagnale posed as a pediatrician named Dr. Frank Connors. After forging medical credentials, he secured a position as the chief resident at a local hospital. Over the course of 11 months, he successfully avoided performing any medical procedures by delegating tasks to interns and nurses. While he claims no patients were harmed during his tenure, this episode showcased his remarkable ability to blend into highly specialized fields. Abagnale's impersonation of a lawyer is perhaps his most impressive feat of audacity. After forging a Harvard Law School degree, he passed the Louisiana bar exam and secured a job in the office of the state attorney general. He worked there for 8 months before resigning, fearing exposure. In Utah, Abagnale posed as a sociology professor at Brigham Young University. Despite having no formal education beyond high school, he taught classes for an entire semester before moving on. By the late 1960s, Abagnale's activities had drawn the attention of law enforcement agencies across the United States. His crimes spanned multiple jurisdictions, making coordination among authorities difficult. The FBI took the lead, with Special Agent Joe Shee assigned to the case. Tracking Abagnale was a monumental challenge. His ability to switch identities, coupled with his frequent travel, made him nearly impossible to pin down. For years, Abagnale evaded capture, often slipping through the cracks just as investigators closed in. In one instance, Abagnale narrowly escaped arrest by leaping out of a hotel window and fleeing on foot. On another occasion, he brazenly posed as a federal agent to gain access to sensitive information about his own investigation. Each encounter with law enforcement seemed to fuel his confidence, further emboldening his schemes. In 1969, Abagnale's luck finally ran out. While in France, he was arrested by local authorities after a former girlfriend recognized him and tipped off the police. His arrest marked the end of an extraordinary run, but his troubles were far from over. He was extradited to Sweden, where he faced charges of forgery, and then to the United States. In the U.S., Abagnale faced a litany of charges, including fraud, forgery, and theft. Convicted and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, he began serving his sentence at the Federal Correctional Institution in Petersburg, Virginia. While in prison, Abagnale's unique skills caught the attention of federal authorities. The FBI offered him a deal. In exchange for his early release, he would assist them in uncovering and preventing financial crimes. Abagnale agreed, marking the beginning of his transformation from a notorious criminal to a respected authority on fraud prevention. Upon his release, Abagnale founded Abagnale & Associates, a consulting firm specializing in fraud prevention. Over the decades, he has worked with banks, corporations, and government agencies to identify vulnerabilities and develop safeguards against financial crimes. His insights have saved millions of dollars and prevented countless crimes. Frank Abagnale's story captured the public's imagination and was immortalized in the 1980 autobiographical book Catch Me If You Can. The story gained even more fame with the 2002 film adaptation, directed by Steven Spielberg and starring Leonardo DiCaprio as Abagnale and Tom Hanks as Agent Joe Shee, renamed Carl Hanratty in the film. While the movie dramatized certain aspects of his life, it stayed true to the essence of his story, a tale of ingenuity, deception, and redemption. Today, Abagnale is a sought-after speaker, sharing his experiences to educate others about fraud and cybersecurity. The case of Frank Abagnale offers several important lessons for individuals and organizations. Many of Abagnale's schemes succeeded because institutions failed to verify credentials and documents thoroughly. Abagnale's greatest weapon was his ability to manipulate people. His success highlights the need for training employees to recognize and counter social engineering tactics. Abagnale's journey from criminal to consultant demonstrates that even those who stray far from the law can find a path to redemption.